I love that intro music. Always pumps me up. Today is June 1st, 2022. You're watching The Pipeline. I'm Western Standard publisher, Derek Fildebrandt. The news editor.
Getting confused with my job now?
You know what? I want all the jobs.
On all the jobs.
I used to have almost all the jobs. I'm down more or less to one job now.
Exactly.
Yeah. The actual news editor is Dave Naylor. How you doing, Dave?
I'm good, thank you.
We're out. Are you Albertan enough to cheer for the Oilers now?
No.
Or you're too Calgarian?
Too Calgarian. You know, been here 50 years. Why would I want to cheer for Edmonton?
I'm just not Calgarian enough. I guess I'm more Alberta than Calgary, I guess. So I'm willing to swallow my pride on that one and go for the Oilers.
It's only going to last 3 more games anyway. So
yeah, maybe we'll see. There's another guy in the studio here, Western Standard Opinion and Broadcast Editor, Cory Morgan. Cory, you care about any of this stuff?
Not really.
No.
Not a sports guy. Well, till the Steelers get going.
Okay. There we go.
Surrounded by losers today.
That's nothing new.
Okay, well, we've got, there's a lot going on. We've got an interesting show. We're going to discuss the new federal government's gun bans, freezing handgun sales, and a lot of other new bans and restrictions on guns in Canada. This isn't banning all guns, but bit by bit, it's certainly looking an awful lot like this is where the federal government wants to go. They're not going there right away. They're politically smart enough to know that they can't get away with that right now. That seems to be the direction they're going in. So we're going to be discussing, is this a part of a move towards a total firearms ban, at least among people who don't work for the government in Canada. Also, Canada's never-ending travel restrictions. Canada is one of the only countries left in the world. I think the only country really with a lockdown that's lasted longer is North Korea. Lockdown world champions, North Korea. Now, obviously, this isn't lockdown, but it is locking people into and out of Canada in many cases. Canada's continued travel restrictions, defying all science, defying all logic, except for the political logic, I suppose, for the Liberals' perspective. And the Alberta United Conservative Party leadership race officially underway with the first candidate that is filed. Other candidates preparing to launch campaigns. And actually, I have an exclusive story that just came out hours ago for the Western Standard's own Rachel Emmanuel about Michelle Rempel-Garner testing the waters, making some calls about potentially jumping in herself. So before we get to it, though, we got to pay the bills. That means we got to mention one of my favorite sponsors, a founding sponsor of the Western Standard, Bitcoin Well. Bitcoin Well is an Alberta-based company right across Western Canada. Even in Ontario, they've got Bitcoin ATMs set around. You can put your cash in, exchange it for Bitcoin. You can access your Bitcoin and take cash out. It's a fantastic system with ATMs right across from Vancouver Island all the way into Ontario. Beyond that, if you're a small business owner, you could look at a program they've got set up like the Bitcoin Savings Program. We use it here at the Western Standard. We pay a portion of what we pay all of our reporters and other employees at the Standard. A portion of their salary comes in Bitcoin. The Western Standard matches that on top of it. It's a great way to treat your employees well, incentivize them to save some money, and particularly to save money in a currency that isn't going to devalue itself the way the Canadian federal dollar is right now. You should check it out, bitcoinwell.com. Check it out. It's a fantastic service, and you're not going to be treated just as another number in a queue. They're going to deal with you as an individual person, treating you like the customer you are. All right. Also, who also values their customers? The Western Standard. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, you should be. It's only $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access to Western Standard content. We're breaking tons of exclusive stories. You want to know what's happening inside the United Conservative Party of Alberta's leadership. There is no way to know what the hell's happening unless you're reading the Western Standard and the exclusive content we're breaking. We're proudly bailout free. We're one of the only media in Canada that refuse to accept the federal government's media bailout subsidies. And we do it proudly because you guys have been stepping up in massive numbers subscribing as members of the Western Standard, and that is allowing us to do what we do. So if you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to westernstandard.news/membership and sign up. If you don't like it, well, that's too bad. You can just cancel. All right. Let's get into it. New gun legislation coming. Mainstream media call it gun control. Who would be opposed to gun control? No one's opposed to gun control. This is not controlling guns. This is controlling people and what law-abiding firearms owners do. Dave, tell us about this new legislation.
Well, very coincidentally, it comes just a couple days after that horrible school massacre in Texas. So good timing, bad timing, deliberate timing. Justin Trudeau came out, and the big topic on it was handguns. Complete freeze, cap on handguns, no longer for sale. You can't trade them. You can't give me one of yours. I can't trade or get one from Cory. Just complete and utter cap on it. So that was the big news. There's some other minor stuff about the magazine and Cory's pellet gun. It can only be 5 shots maximum.
My 22, yeah, it was a rimfire, so I could have had 10 before, still have 10. But theoretically, it would have to be modified to only take 5.
For a little gopher gun.
For a little gopher gun. And they've promised by the year end, believe it or not, that they're going to come up with their plan on how they're going to buy back all these 1,500 different varieties of gun that they banned last year. So they still haven't come up with that yet, but all the experts seem to think it'll be $1 billion boondoggle. Some experts saying as much as $6 or $7 billion. But yeah, the big news this week, Derek, was handguns, and obviously they think that's going to put a stop to all criminality in Canada. But hey, the very next day, a 15-year-old boy in Toronto picked up with a handgun and charged criminally. So
$20 says that handgun was not legally sold in Canada.
I'm not taking that bet.
Yeah. Well, it's been well established. The Canadian government does not track the origin of firearms used in the commission of crimes. They just, for some reason, after all of this time, decades and decades of debate around guns, we don't track where the hell these things come from. The only jurisdiction I'm aware of that did it in any kind of significant way was Toronto. I think a year ago, their chief came out with a report, and they found that the overwhelming majority of firearms used in the commission of a crime, in Toronto at least, were smuggled from the United States.
It was 86%.
Okay, there you go. That was on your show, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that's
still got it.
Like, you don't remember that from a year ago. Okay. Cory, I don't think we need to debate the efficacy of what they're doing here. It's clearly virtue signaling. It's clearly not going to do anything. I'm not sure the Liberals even believe it does. If handguns are such a menace, they would ban them today. They would do it now, and they'd come and try and take it from our cold, dead hands kind of thing. But they're not. They're going piece by piece. What do you think it's clearly a political goal they're trying to achieve here. I think they're smart enough to know this is going to do nothing. What is the political goal they're trying to achieve?
It's ideological and it's control, and it is clearly political. I think the main indicator that's political is the fact that they sat on this. It takes a while to draft legislation, get all that ready. They could have tabled that months ago if they wanted to, but they waited. They waited until the world was on edge and the right disaster was going to approach, and that disaster was this shooting in Texas. So they could look how reactive we are, look how we're going to make sure we're not like that, and we're going to keep you all safe. And again, it doesn't matter that none of this would apply to what happened there or what will happen here. Mm-hmm. It's a political move, and it follows on their ideology. And that's all it's modeled for, is standing up. And it makes it hard, because every time you oppose it or say something, oh, you support things like that shooting down Texas. No, I don't, but it doesn't matter. Now you're on the defensive. And that's the ugly kind of politics this government continues to play.
Well, it's not just the Liberals doing it. Jean Charest now is reversing his position on guns. He's not going to touch what the Liberals have done so far. He's more or less going to respect the new stuff the Liberals have done, including banning all sorts of stuff. But he's kind of added to his position now.
Yeah, well, don't forget he was the premier in Quebec when they brought it in. Right, so he's got a long history of supporting firearms registries and regulations and all that sort of stuff. So it's just giving more ammunition to the people in the race who are just describing him as really a liberal and conservative sheep's clothing.
Cory, do you think, am I being overly paranoid here? Have I got my Alex Jones tinfoil hat on too much here? Or do you think they really are trying to move towards a total firearms ban in Canada?
Absolutely. They've always wanted to. Look, this goes all the way back to the discussions from the early 90s with the registry and Alan Rock. Back then, there was only one point to registering long guns, only one. You can't seize them if you don't know where they are. Their intent was to find out where every firearm was in Canada and then to take them, and it failed dismally. And now they're trying other means of doing it, incrementally banning individual firearms, making individual firearms illegal. Like some of them, I was talking to Tony Bernardo from the Shooting Sports Association. Some of those changes to the magazine capacity, they can't be fixed in these firearms. These firearms are now going to be illegal, and they will have to be, if a law-abiding person would turn them in and trash them. It's just bit by bit, and they'll keep adding to these things. They want to disarm the entire country. They want to do as Australia did. And they're going to have a hard time, though. Something a lot of people forget. Canada actually is one of the most highly armed countries, civilian-wise, in the world. We're 13th, I believe it is. I mean, the Americans are well and beyond us, but still we have tens of millions of firearms in this country, and the government doesn't know where most of them are, and these efforts are just going to cost a fortune.
And it's just going to drive things underground again. Talking to a buddy yesterday, he's got a plethora of handguns. He says they're either going to fall over the side of a boat, or they may get stolen in a break and enter where the thief magically leaves behind $1,000. It's just going to drive more and more stuff underground, which always seems to happen with the Liberals.
I had some angry guy on Twitter just the other day. I was bashing this bill. And he says, "Well, do you have some kind of interest in the black market?" Implying that I must be a kind of black market gun runner. My dream job actually isn't the Western Standard. It's to be a gun runner into places like Venezuela, to arm their population, to overthrow their governments. That's my real dream job. I never imagined my dream job actually might be running guns into Canada.
All you need is a drone.
It's not hard.
That's what's happening in Ontario now. They're being flown in by the dozens in drones.
We've got a 9,000 kilometer border just with the United States. We've got coasts on either side of us. Nothing is going to stop firearms from coming into this.
Yeah. The black market is, but what my response was, well, if the government keeps passing legislation like this, I am going to have an interest in the black market. I don't know many gun owners who will willfully surrender their guns to the government. I don't expect many gun owners to barricade themselves up in a strong room in their house and shoot whoever tries to take it. I don't think we're going to see that, but I think we're going to see exactly what you described there. Well, I lost the guns, and then you get in trouble for that. You know what happens if you misplace a restricted firearm in Canada? You know what the federal government can do? They can take your gun license away. Well, who cares? If they're taking away our guns, you don't need the gun license anyway. So you're going to have all of these guns that people own lawfully right now, and the government's going to ban them, and eventually they're going to send a guy to your house to come and take them. I don't know where they are. Yeah, we had a boating accident, and they're gone. And what we're gonna have is all of these guns. And I'd rather see my own guns in the black market in the hands of some, I'm not gonna say the words, unrighteous politician who would seize them from me. And I think a lot of people feel the same way. We're gonna see now a lot of those guns will make it to otherwise law-abiding people, but some people be less scrupulous. And the real black market, the black market that traffics in criminal guns, that's going to be flooded. That is who's going to benefit here is organized crime and pushing around illegal guns.
There was a report this week, 4 years ago, the Liberals decriminalized pot. And a report out 4 years later shows the black market in pot, the drug dealers are getting richer and richer. They're making more money now than they ever have. And they're selling more pot than the legalized government stores. That's the same thing will happen with the guns. No doubt about it.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we're more restrictions on guns, but the restrictions on the ability of every Canadian citizen to freely enter, leave, and travel within their country is not changing. We're staying extremely restrictive. I suppose we're not, North Korea's on their 75th year of lockdowns. We're going to be approaching a year of severe travel restrictions on the unvaccinated in Canada. You still can't fly between provinces. You can't get on a plane or a ferry if you go between provinces. You can't. It's virtually impossible to enter and leave on a plane. You can, but you have to pretend to quarantine for a few weeks. You can get away with it, but it's still you're still technically breaking the law. Dave, there's some news on this. The federal government renewing the travel ban.
Yeah, they voted this week. The vote comes up every month that they have to renew it.
This is a vote of the cabinet?
No, this is a vote of Parliament. The Conservatives put in a motion to rescind all the travel restrictions. And the Liberals, the Bloc, the Green, and the NDP all said, no, we must keep them. The Conservatives, of course, voted no to rescind them. So, of course, the majority rules, and they're here for another month. So the Conservatives can bring it up again June 30th. And interestingly, the head of WestJet today was flying in Europe and took a picture of himself not wearing a mask, saying, "Oh, it's nice to fly mask-free." So the head of the CEO of WestJet today, announcing this is ridiculous. He's joining a long list of people, including Alberta Premier Jason Kenney, who have argued this for months, and there just doesn't seem to be any medical reason for it, doesn't it?
None. There's not a one.
Well, so there clearly is none. The science, the Liberals love to say, follow the science. They say it on everything.
Every other country did.
Yeah, we're clearly not following the science. It's clearly political. Why would they do this, do you think?
This is pure spite, ego, an embittered prime minister who just does not want to back down an inch on anything that people pushed back on him for. He was embarrassed by the truckers' convoys. He does not want to look like he's backing down on anything. There's no other basis for this. It's killing our tourism industry. Another month now of people rescheduling their trips. And let's not pretend it's a minor amount. I mean, there's a lot of unvaccinated people in the world. That's a large hit to our tourism industry, not to mention just the hassle of crossing the border. This comes into people's consideration if they're going to go somewhere. We got a whole world competing. We got Mexico down there that wants to take tourists in. We've got Americans who will travel within the United States. And all of this just because we've got a prime minister with a chip on his shoulder. There's no science whatsoever to support keeping these vaccine mandates.
And who's taking a big hit this week is the Stampede. All those Americans who were going to come in, it's just a month away. They had their plans, and they're going elsewhere now.
Oh, yeah.
The unvaccinated people in Toronto who were hoping to come and visit for a week, they're not coming anymore. So I guess all we have to hope for is that Kevin Costner's vaccinated, or they'll be trying to find a new Stampede parade marshal.
One of the cast members from that show, there was that video he put out a while back saying he wanted to travel up, and I can't remember his name.
He's kind of the old cowboy.
Yeah, he was going to go on the red carpet, and I think it was the Screen Actors Guild.
States, yeah,
and they wouldn't let him.
I can't go because I'm not vaccinated. Well, he won't be coming up. It was scheduled, but this costs. This comes with a real cost, and it shouldn't be dismissed.
Oh.
Well, that's because we have Jamie Dutton for our prime minister. See what I did there?
Yeah, that's very good.
Ew. All right. Well, speaking of all this, our next sponsor is the Canadian Shooting Sports Association. I've been a member of the Canadian Shooting Sports Association for well over a decade, long before I started this with the Western Standard here. So when I vouch for them as a great firearms rights organization, I'm telling the truth because I've been a member of them long before they were a sponsor of ours. The Canadian Shooting Sports Association is important right now more than ever. When you have politicians who who use tragedy for political ends, like you're seeing in Canada right now, the Canadian left wishes they had America's problems. They wish we had, more. The Canadian left never had their '60s moment. We didn't have a Vietnam War when racial minority communities said we want to be treated equally. Canadians said, well, it sounds reasonable. Okay. We had problems and we sorted them out pretty well here. And the Canadian left was jealous. They never had their '60s. They just never had to have that moment. And so they're constantly trying to recreate America's problems here because they want to fight problems that we just don't have. And that manifests itself all too often on the backs of law-abiding firearms owners who just want to be left alone to do what they do safely and responsibly. And that's why we need organizations like the Canadian Shooting Sports Association right now who are fighting against this kind of cynical, corrupt politics that seeks to steal your firearms simply to appease some liberal voters in downtown Toronto or Montreal who wouldn't know a shotgun if it bit him in the ass. So if you're not yet a member of the Canadian Shooting Sports Association, you really should be. I am, and it's necessary if you believe in your right to own, use, and safely carry firearms in Canada. Corey, what's their website?
It is CSSA-CILA.org.
Okay, just production. We're going to make a note. I want a jingle made with that, with a little bouncy ball along the bottom. Every time Corey says it, we should do it with a jingle. Okay. Speaking of jingles, the United Conservative Party of Alberta's leadership race is now officially underway. We had the first. He's not announced yet. We know it's coming because he's registered. We had the first registration just a few days ago, right?
And an announcement followed quickly that day. Travis Taves is the first official candidate in the race. Kicked it off with a very slick media presentation up in Grand Prairie, where his riding is, in a press conference, and he was all kitted out in his cowboy duds and riding a horse and
little barbecue sauce.
Yeah, it was either a fly or a barbecue sauce.
I think it was barbecue sauce.
Some people said both. So
they're both pretty Albertan.
They're both pretty Albertan, yeah. Maybe a mosquito in there too would have helped. But yeah, and there are lots of other developments now. As you've mentioned, we've got Michelle Rempel-Garner testing the water. We've already got Danielle Smith and Brian Jean who have said they're going to, just haven't filed the paperwork yet. Rebecca Schultz is also testing the water. So yeah, it's getting more and more exciting. Kenny was asked who he's going to support. Obviously, he says he's not going to support anybody, but he's waiting for a couple of weeks till he does a full cabinet shuffle because he thinks more cabinet ministers are going to join the race. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's going to be a fun few weeks.
It is tough with these kinds of cabinet shuffles because one person leaving is not just a simple stick something in. These are ripple effects, and you've got to move all over. And so when you've got multiple people dropping out of cabinet for something like this, it's pretty tough. That actually probably is a smart move to wait, just have these jobs temporarily filled in the meantime. Travis Taves is out. He's not announcing him as such, but he's well known to be sort of the kind of the Kenny establishment candidate. And I'm not really meaning that pejoratively, but he's backed by that inner circle around Kenny. A lot of senior people in the party affiliated with Kenny. On the other side, on the other polar opposite, you've got, and not really by policy, but more in personality, you got Jean as the ultimate anti-Kenny. Anti-Kenny, but maybe not as outspokenly so. We've got Danielle Smith. But with the exit from the race unexpectedly of Doug Schweitzer, we expected to kind of carry that more of the progressive conservative flag. That left a bit of a hole there on that side of the party, and we might see that being filled to some extent by Michelle Rempel-Garner. Actually, Dave, why don't I'm going to go to Corey for a comment in a second. Why don't you tell us, we had the Western Standard's Rachel Emanuel break that just hours ago, an exclusive story about her testing the waters.
Yeah, 3 sources Rachel had. Apparently a survey was put out asking who people thought would be good for the race, and Michelle Rempel-Garner did quite well. She hasn't spoken to us. We haven't been able to get a hold of her. But yes, I mean, I think she's done federally, supporting, what's his name, the mayor, supporting Patrick Brown was a very strange thing, I think, for her to do. He's obviously not going to win, so she may have cut off her nose to spite her face there. So she may be looking for other opportunities, and I think she would probably do fairly well in Alberta.
Corey, I think for some time, Michelle Rempel's been very frustrated with federal politics. I think she's been frustrated. She's actually spoken publicly about frustration with the Conservative Party catering to, kind of that central Canadian too much. When the Conservative Party voted roughly 50-50 on a free vote about giving Quebec seats that its population does not deserve in the next redistribution of seats, she was very critical of her own party. I feel like she's been kind of checking out for some time. But she's an interesting candidate. I don't think you could peg her, that neatly as a traditional progressive conservative. One day, she's like signing the Buffalo Declaration, which is a pretty hard line Alberta and Saskatchewan rights document with about maximum autonomy and respect within Canada, constitutional change, stuff that people don't want to talk about anymore. The next day, she's kind of, speaking almost in kind of woke language. Then the day after, she's hard on firearms rights and fits right in at the Calgary Gun Show. How do you think she would fit into this race?
I don't think she would well, to be honest. She hasn't been well established in the provincial political scene. So there are a lot of overlap, and there's a lot of operators federally as well as provincially. But getting a team will be a little more difficult. But that Brown, as Dave said, it sunk her not just federally. I mean, the performance of Brown and some of the stunts they've done, including from Michelle's own Twitter account, with trying to label opposing candidates as racists and that sort of garbage. She's not endeared herself to the Albertan conservative set right now. As well, I mean, you could say it's somebody who's their own person and has a broad set of policies, because she is hard to pin down, but it also can make her look inconsistent. I mean, if you are a really red of the red Tories, you don't like the regionalism, the autonomy move. Well, the Buffalo Declaration will kind of, rather than bringing in more that could make deal breakers for her on the other end, or with a hardcore social conservative, her very socially liberal stances could sour some of them on things. So, I mean, she would be fresh, at least on the scene, which is something a lot of people are asking for. So fair enough there. But I don't know the way she bounces around, if she'd be able to consolidate the support needed in one spot to win her leadership.
Well, she would also be the only Calgary, although Rebecca Schultz would, I guess, count. But I mean, with all respect to Rebecca Schultz, I don't think she'll be really a contender to win. She'll probably have a respectable campaign, but I don't see Rebecca Schultz as having the horsepower and the name recognition necessary to win a race like this. Michelle Rempel does have the name recognition. For all the talk of the Federal Conservative Party being an Alberta-based party, most people can name very few federal Conservative MPs right now. I think if you asked, if we walked outside of the building here or onto the LRT line and we asked people to name a single federal Conservative MP, probably name Michelle Rempel. Anyone else?
Your average person on the street?
No.
She might be it. She really might be it. So she's got name recognition. But where she kind of fits, because these are coalition parties and there's tribes within the tribes. The winner normally needs to have some kind of broad appeal, but she's got opinions that appeal to people on different sides and different tribes. But she's also got very public opinions on and policies on issues that very much put them off. I think you're right. The Patrick Brown campaign was a very curious choice. I'd put that's my polite term for it. And that campaign is, it's bizarre. It's been courting exclusively ethnic and religious minority communities. That's all. And that is a part of politics in Canada. It's a part of politics in Alberta. But normally that's kind of a side to a campaign to give you an edge over everyone else. But it's been exclusively that, and then it's been going around accusing everyone of being racist, and that's not necessarily her, but she's a major part of that campaign. Is there any thought? You guys have any thoughts on just how much her affiliation with the Patrick Brown campaign might hinder what she does here?
Well, I think you got to look at candidates in terms of how much stink do they have on them. Travis Taves was a member of Kenny's inner circle, was a participant in the Sky Palace fiasco, but he seems to have come out of it with less stink than, say, a Tyler Shandro.
That's because no one even knows who he is.
Yeah, exactly. So he comes out of it with sort of smelling not too bad, despite the fact he was in the inner circle. Michelle Rempel Garner's stink is all federal, and all what she's, as Corey's already talked about, it was strange that she joined Patrick Brown to begin with, and some of her actions during the campaign are inexplicable. I know there's a lot of Albertans that were also upset that she seemed to spend a lot of time down in the States during all the restrictions with her husband down there in Oklahoma. So she's got that stink on her. So, I mean, it's all a matter of who's got the less stink.
Yeah, and also, as Derek said too, it's a tribal thing. Like, that's what I wonder about. She hasn't really been around and establishing with the UCP tribe. I mean, she could consolidate a lot of opposition to herself among the others who are already gathering. Again, it's not impossible to overcome, but she's got a big disadvantage if she's going to kind of almost parachute back into a provincial race.
Well, maybe that's why she's looking for people to help her.
Let's test the waters.
Well, so let's talk about that coming from federal to provincial here. She's obviously a prominent federal Conservative MP right now. But we've had a lot of federal Conservative MPs come in, and the track record's not been great so far. Jim Prentice came from on high, and it ended spectacularly. Brian Jean was a federal MP. Now, Brian Jean doesn't get actually tied with it as much for some reason. Maybe it's because he was not a very prominent MP. He was definitely a backbencher and was not very well known beyond his constituency. But he was a federal MP and came in with the Wild Rose and then for the UCP. Jason Kenney, obviously another very prominent federal Conservative MP, came in, and that has now ended in disaster. There is a record of it maybe going poorly, but there is a record of federal Conservative MPs being very successful in winning party leaderships. I'll get from both of you. Handicap this. Is this this time around? Is this going to be a help or hindrance? Is this a net positive or net negative for Rempel as a federal MP, as a potentially running for the UCP?
Well, what she's got is, as everybody said, is the name recognition, and you can't beat the name recognition because a lot of people, they go, when you're voting for city council, you may recognize, oh yeah, I recognize that person's name, and that's why they get the vote. So it gives her a good advantage. It gives her, one step ahead of anybody else that's considering running, certainly. But she's got to get organized.
But do you think there's any fatigue with the idea of federal Conservative MPs coming down to the Alberta level or not?
I don't think so at the moment. Let's hear what she has to say. We're just in hypothetical situations at the moment. Let's hear her platform. But you're right, though. There's not been a single one of them that's covered themselves in glory, has there?
Well, I'm a lot with Dave on that. And the federal, there's an advantage of getting that profile. Actually, just about 20 minutes before we left to do this show, I threw out a quick poll on Twitter of 4 candidates who look to have declared. I don't know Twitter polls are what they are, but I got about 120 responses before we came in here, a quick little measure. And I had Brian Jean, Danielle Smith, Travis Taze, and something that we haven't mentioned yet is that Rajan Sani. She's our transportation minister, yeah. And in that 120 votes, she garnered 2 of them. This is a provincial cabinet minister. This should be a prominent person, but nobody knows who the hell she is.
You can't pronounce her name.
Yeah, exactly. And my apologies if you enter the race and maybe we'll get to know each other. I'll get better with it. But that name recognition is essential. It puts you at a terrible disadvantage again if people don't even know who you are to begin with. So the profile that Rempel Garner built federally, I think it certainly helps. More than hinders.
And she'll have some sort of organization in Calgary, obviously just limited to within her riding, but she handily wins her riding every election. So she's got that in place already.
Well, she does beat even compared to other Conservative MPs in the city. She is a rare Conservative MP in a safe seat, and she doesn't really treat her seat as very safe. She door knocks between elections furiously. She's organizing, fundraising, whereas most rural Alberta and suburban Calgary MPs, really outside of the 2 inner city ridings here, they take the seat for granted because they can. There's no reason really to break a sweat because you're going to win every time. And she doesn't. And while that maybe runs up her score a little bit, it does mean that she actually has a team in place that are good ground game organizers. So I wouldn't discount her. I think she comes to it also probably able to bring a lot of federal Conservatives with her as well. I think she could be a contender to win it that we weren't really talking about so much last week.
Yeah, and during the all-federal election, she's out in other MPs' ridings, helping them, right? So it'll be time to call back a favor and we'll get some help being brought into the city.
Those kind of chits matter when this happens. All right. Well, that's it for today. Corey and Dave, thank you for joining me today.
How drunk do you think Johnny Depp is right now in England?
I think he's recreating his favorite scenes from Blow.
I'll bet you he is.
Yeah.
Johnny Depp won big.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. If you're not yet a member of the Western Standard, go to Western Standard Online. That's the old website. westernstandard.news/membership. It's only $10 a month or $99 a year for unlimited access. We're bailout free. We're proudly Western. And I think you're going to get value for money. If you don't, you can just cancel it. That's the beauty of supporting the genuinely independent bailout free press. That's it. That's all. Thank you very much. God bless.